Hi, folks. This is Ashley L. Jones, author of Modern Cast Iron. And as you know by now, I'm working on a follow-up book called Skilletheads. And this is all about the collection and restoration of cast iron cookware. And so I'm interviewing skillet heads, folks who know a lot more about cast iron than you and I do. And so today I have with me Eric Steckling of Marquette Castings, and I am so excited to have him here to talk about Marquette. So Eric, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always happy to talk about cast iron.
It seems that people who like cast iron are always willing to talk about it.
Yep, and I know we're only scheduled for a half hour, so we'll have to stick to that, I guess.
We talk
right?
fast. Yeah, I slow it down in the editing is what happens. So it's you, and you have two brothers that helped you start Marquette Castings, and you have a friend as well. So it's you, Eric, and then there's Kurt and Carl Steckling.
Yep.
Okay. And we're not familiar with your names because why? I mean, you guys are kind of new on the scene, right? Marquette, it was what, 2015 you were founded.
Yeah, so newer, but maybe just a little bit too quiet. Maybe that's the problem.
Well, I'm reading reviews, and the reviews are amazing. So people need to know about Marquette, and I will be getting a Marquette skillet very soon. And I'm very excited to try it out and let folks know what I think about it, because Marquette is very interesting. It looks very traditional at first, but the more you look at it, the more you realize there's some unique differences to it. So I want to dig into that in a second. But first, you guys are not located in Marquette.
We are not, no. So we're located in southern Michigan.
Okay.
I've lived in Michigan my whole life, and the name was really a nod to Michigan's iron producing history.
Mm-hmm.
So Marquette in the Upper Peninsula, at times has been the national leader in producer of iron ore. So they have a really rich history of iron and also copper and some other elements mining up there. So I thought it was a perfect name. I've always loved Marquette, so that made it a little bit easier as well.
And you guys are in Royal Oak, Michigan.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Now, I have to point out, you look rather young. And this is interesting to me because in the world of cast iron, a lot of folks I talk to are older guys, and I mean guys, men, older men, and it's unusual to have a younger guy that's not only involved and loves cast iron, but starts a foundry. Like, this is really blowing my mind. And the fact that the style is so traditional is very ironic to me. I would expect someone to say, okay, a younger person is going to have a very, very modern style. And then, I'm going to interview some women soon. And you might think the women are going to have the lightest weight cast iron. Not true. So it's very interesting how individualized it is. So please explain to us how we've got some younger guys, brothers, that come out with a cast iron manufacturing company, and then how you came about doing something so traditional. How did this happen?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I'd probably come at this from a different angle than a lot of people. I don't have a long history with cast iron. So my history starts, from 5 years into my marriage. This set of pots that we got as a wedding present, or pots and pans rather, were failing. And to me it was like, well, this is ridiculous. The surface is flaking off. Otherwise they look like they're good. So what do I do? Do I throw these things away? What's the answer? So I know that's not traditional for a lot of people who are super into skillets. And you mentioned I'm not that young. I did just turn 40, so don't think that I'm super young here. But my history with cast iron is different in that it wasn't about family breakfasts around the table for my grandma.
Yeah.
That was not exactly the story here at all. So I do have a different perspective. I guess I don't know if I'd really call myself a collector. Maybe like a little bit. I feel like I'm more interested in like the making and creating side. So I think that's why I went really quickly from like the that problem or this like, hey, let's do it better to actually just getting into it. So, and that's where I started. So I did a little research, started with, I think, a number 6 Griswold that I got on eBay. And shortly thereafter, kind of learned about, okay, well, what does this modern, mass produced stuff look like? And I could not believe the difference. It boggled my mind that something could be so amazing that was, 60 years old, and that the modern stuff was like a fraction of the quality, so that and then I kind of learned about some of the other companies that were kind of doing the same thing or had the same ideas. I could see that just by the eBay listings and sales volumes of this stuff alone, that like people were interested in this. So that's kind of how I got into it, to be honest. And then it really turned into a wormhole. I'm sure, as you've learned, making really high quality cast iron skillets is not easy. And now we can kind of see why people aren't using the method we're using. People aren't doing this in mass. It's low volume. It's hard. But it's fun, and I enjoy it. And to be honest, like, one of my favorite things about cast iron is really the fact that it does last forever. And for me, that's just a huge incentive to put the effort into the product and to really make it something that's amazing. So like, this may sound funny, but like, no one really knows about us right now, but how cool would it be in 30, 40 years if our skillets start showing up on eBay being the sought after items of it. And I feel like with where we're at now with our product that we could get there.
Absolutely. I mean, like I mentioned before, the reviews are wonderful. You guys really are putting in your effort to create a great design, and I want to show that. You have one handy, right, that we can look at?
I do, actually. Yeah, I had to steal it from my stove. And I would say that this thing is blacker than probably most. So coming out of the box, we season with flaxseed oil, and it's going to have a little bit more of a gray tinge to it. But as you can probably imagine, I'm a little fanatical about the condition of this thing. So
that's looking pretty good for here.
Look exactly like this.
So let's look at that handle, because that's, to me, the most striking difference is that it is a forked handle, so it's going to be cooler to the touch, and it's got this nice ergonomic angle to it. It looks rather a pretty good length as well. It's not too short.
Yeah, not super stubby. And really, when you're talking about designing a pan, because we've talked and thought about this a lot, right? There isn't a lot of innovation going on in this round area, right? It's, you can talk about wall heights and angles and all that stuff, and pour spouts and rims, but like, not a huge difference there. I mean, for us, it's a couple things. Wall thickness is really what is going to get the weight down. So for us, that was like super, super important, high on the list of like things that we had to do. So I've got calipers, and I've been measuring, all the vintage skillets, and kind of knew where we needed to be from a design perspective. So when we started the design, that's how we designed it. And then later on, pushed the manufacturers to say, is this possible? Can we do it? So obviously challenges on that side too, but yeah, so you had mentioned the handle. Couple things about this. So it was first designed to be comfortable. That was the main goal. One of the cool, I guess, things that we came away with this design after casting some samples is that because there's a larger mass of iron near the end of the handle, it really stays a lot cooler. And it sounds funny, but it's not necessarily the forked design that keeps it cooler. It's the fact that it just necks down to this super thin profile right here. And then there's more mass of iron on the end. So, you can get this thing basically searing hot on the stove, and the end of this handle is still cool enough to touch. As you get down, here more toward where it gets thinner, this can get hot here, but the heat has a really hard time moving to that thicker section. So we didn't like do any heat modeling when we had designed it, but after we cast it, we kind of realized that that's what was happening.
Nice. So when you were talking about the walls, is your wall thickness thinner than the heat plate then?
A little bit,
A
yeah,
little bit.
just a little bit thinner than the bottom. Also, one thing that's talked about a ton in cast iron is the thing they call the heat
The
ring,
heat ring,
which
yes.
is funny because I call it a grind ring.
Yep.
It's like has nothing to do with heat
Yes, that's
whatsoever.
what I read. Yes, it used to be called a machining ring.
Yes, yep, and it's there for good reason. Casting a skillet really, really thin, it's hard to keep the bottom perfectly flat. For gas range, doesn't matter a whole lot. For glass top ranges, or even just setting it on a granite countertop, you don't want this thing to spin.
Right.
So, we designed in, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a little, little raised edge all the way
Yep.
around. And that way, at the foundry, they have a big spinning wheel. They can take this thing and just put it against the wheel and make that perfectly flat. So yeah, it's an important detail, I think, to have. No one wants a skillet that spins around, and having just a tiny little edge on there really helps that a lot.
And you have the two traditional pour spouts on it as well. But I read on your website that there's a bit of a flared rim to the edge too.
Yep. So, that it's kind of hard to see
Mhm.
in this camera angle. But yeah,
Yeah.
the inside is flared, and then there's a little bit of a lip.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can see
We
it
can see
there,
that.
kind of all the way around.
Mhm. So
So
what's the point of that for your skillet? Is that more of just aesthetics, or does that help you with pouring, or?
yeah, I think it definitely helps with pouring. I mean, I think people go overboard in talking about pour spouts and talking
Mhm.
about how efficient they
Mhm.
are. I think this is a great design. I think if you have really thick grease, that it's going to kind of run down the skillet
Mhm.
regardless of what
Mhm.
that pour design is. So I wouldn't go over the top in saying that this is like,
Mhm.
the huge solution to all your problems. But yeah, I think it's a pretty good design.
It looks great. There's a lot of good elements there. I mean, the standard skillet is the standard skillet for a reason. It works,
Yeah.
and what you've done there is kind of improve on what's been going on for quite a long time. And when you were talking about the thinness of the skillet, you weren't lying, because I've been keeping tabs on which, how much pans weigh, how much they cost and everything. And the Marquette 10-inch skillet comes in at 4.1 pounds. And the next size up from you that I have found for another manufacturer is 4.5. So yours is the lightest weight skillet that I have found. I mean, that says a lot, because a lot of people just don't use cast iron because of the weight. And if you get a 6 or 7 pounder and then you add food to it, it can
Yeah.
be very difficult. So that's really great. You guys so far are winning the lightweight award there.
That's good. We've put a ton of effort to get there. I know you kind of had some questions around like the casting method and like
Yes.
the sand casting, milling.
Yes.
So
I want to hear about this.
we've been through the whole process with all of that. And we initially started with sand casting and milling, kind of like what everyone else is doing. But for me, it just did not achieve the quality level of my Wagner. So it's kind of like, well, what good is this? We're not getting there. This process is not getting us there. It's not getting us the weight, the wall thickness. It's not getting us, the details. There were just so many limitations with that. For example, a handle like this is not possible with sand casting. To get into a little bit of the details, if you tried to run iron through this thin of a profile,
Right.
in a sand mold, it would freeze off right here, and then the handle wouldn't fill. And then there's ways to try and gate it so you have iron flowing into here and in the handle, but that creates some other problems. So we ended up going with this method called lost wax or investment casting. And as far as I know, we're the only ones doing it and have ever done it with cast iron cookware. So I think it's very unique, and it's really the only way for us to get that quality level that we want. So once you move to this method, it changes the game really, because all of a sudden you can cast profiles that you couldn't cast with other methods. You don't have the hand finishing or grinding or milling or secondary processes that you have with other, because it just comes out completely perfect.
So how does it work? Can you explain just a little bit for us laymen how an investment process what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll share some pictures with you too.
Yes.
I think that's really beneficial to see what those steps look like. So what it starts with is a wax pattern. So we have an aluminum tool, like an injection mold tool, that makes an exact skillet out of wax. So if you've ever seen like what aluminum tooling looks like, there's two parts, and it closes, it shoots this thing full of wax, and you get, I'm trying to think if I might, hold on a sec, I might actually have a piece from our 13 skillet. I have a tiny piece that's broken.
That'll work. Oh,
so
okay, yeah.
This is, and you can see this is kind of old, but it's this green wax, and it's super, super smooth. I don't know how well you can see that. It's obviously broken here. You can kind of get an idea of what this wax pattern looks like. It's super light. It's anyway, so this is what gets molded first. And then they take the wax templates and they build them into a tree arrangement. So they basically have, like, if you can picture like 5 or 6 pans in a row on this frame, and the whole frame and everything is all made of wax. We have some videos that show the assembly process of taking these injection molded pieces and building them into this tree, they call it. And then that tree is then taken in coated in a really fine sand and then ceramic. So they mix a ceramic slurry, and they have this robotic arm that basically dips this thing in and moves the whole piece around under this waterfall of ceramic. And so they do about 4 or 5 coats of the ceramic. And in between the coats, they put it in this giant drying oven, for lack of a better explanation, and that dries it out so that they can kind of make that whole process go a lot faster. So after about 5 coats, they're ready to what they call de-wax, and then preheat the shells. So when they heat the shells, the wax melts out, and they actually recapture it and reuse it. But so they like turn it upside down, the wax melts, flows out the bottom, and then what you have left is a perfect cavity for the iron to go in. Now, the reason why you have to do this out of ceramic is because iron melts at such a high temperature. So there's other types of metal injection molding or die casting where you can use steel tooling instead of going through this whole disposable mold process. But iron, really high melting point. So this is one method that you can use to actually cast with iron. So they melt the wax out, they preheat the shells, and then they pour the molten iron in it, and that's it. So after it cools, you have this giant block of skillets, and then all this extra kind of metal hanging around it, and then they've got to cut it all apart, and you've got to blast all the bits of the ceramic shell off. So there's quite a bit of finishing and just in kind of in like extracting the parts from their cast piece. But that's the process in a nutshell.
That's amazing. Okay, so many questions. Let me do a technical question first. I understand that your skillets are smooth. Are they smooth on the cooking interior or the exterior as well?
Yeah, so that's one of the best parts about this process is there's zero compromising, because everything is ridiculously smooth. So that's one thing that bothered me when we were sand casting and milling, is,
Yeah.
yeah, we could mill the inside, but what about the handle? What about the
Yeah.
bottom? What about the
Yeah.
sides? With this, I mean, you can even see even the underside of the handle.
Yes.
You know, the inside, like this is like totally impossible to grind or smooth this off, and you can see it's like
Yeah.
pretty ridiculously
Yeah.
smooth.
Yeah. And like you said, even
So
that shape you wouldn't have even been able to do before.
yeah, and the other thing is like the resolution, and I know the
Uh-huh.
lighting's a bit of a challenge
Yeah, we can
here.
see that. Yeah. Yeah, your
But you
name
can
is in
see
there.
the writing. These are tiny letters,
Yeah.
really tiny letters in the handle, and we're able to get that resolution to come through. I mean, funny enough, I don't know if you're able to see this, but like there are these. I mean, I don't know if you can see this. Can you see the circle over here?
Oh, a little bit. A little
There's
bit.
like, right? Is it right there? See that
Yeah,
circle?
yeah, 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 yeah.
So this circle is a plug from a previous way we were gating the skillet. So like it's plugged in the aluminum tooling and polished smooth, like completely smooth and perfect. Yet you can still see the shadow of the outline on the bottom of the skillet. That's how crazy perfect the resolution is with this method. I mean, that's almost too perfect, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah. You
um,
can't even hide that.
yeah, well, not that it stands out. You
Right.
really would have to see
Yeah.
that, but it just is kind of an example of like what you get here when you step up to investment casting.
That's wild. Okay. How did you come to this? I mean, I know on your website it says, okay, well, the Steckling brothers, they used to tinker around in the basement together, and now they have, a cast iron manufacturing company. But what are your backgrounds that you would be able to approach this and be knowledgeable about it, and then to tackle a method that no one else is using? What are you bringing to the table here that's helping you with this?
I've just always been interested in making and building things. So, I'm a carpenter, as a hobby, welder, light metal fabrication. Um, I've done and taught myself a number of these things.
Mhm.
A couple of years ago, I learned all about how to use a CNC router.
Uh-huh.
So, just like weird random things that I've been just for whatever reason interested in doing. Learning about materials and processes for making things to me just seems pretty natural to do. So, learning more about casting and what the options are there wasn't a huge leap for me.
Wow.
It didn't seem like scary or hard.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, that's kind of how I got into that. And obviously there was a learning curve. I mean, I think we
Sure.
did spend a couple of years trying things out really, but before we got
Mhm.
to this.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it took some time.
Now, how many skillets can you make in a day? Or rather, let's put it this way: how long does it take to make a skillet from beginning to sending it out, mailing it out?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I don't really have the answer offhand, but I can say that like, the process of one skillet, if it went through everything super fast, I mean, it would probably be in the neighborhood of 7 to 10 days,
Okay.
something like that.
Mhm.
Most of that through the casting process, the finishing we can probably do. It's probably going to be 2 days, to be honest, between
Mhm.
the heating cycles and all that. Most of it's with the casting. Having those shells dry
Mhm.
definitely takes some time. So this is definitely not the Decematic mold system where pig iron goes in one side of this giant machine
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
skillets drop out the other. It's definitely not that at all. So we realize with what we're making and the price point and everything, it is not going to be, we're not going to be churning out 20,000 skillets a day. That's just not part of the plan. So it just takes a little more time and effort than that.
Right. And to that point, I mean, we mentioned that it's the lightest weight skillet. It's also racking up toward the higher end price. The 10-inch will run you 250. But
Yep.
It's cast iron. I mean, people are definitely paying that even for the vintage ones. Easily easily for the vintage ones, and you're providing something that is new and yet a vintage style, so it's not out of keeping at all.
Yeah, in my justification here is that, you know, since it lasts forever,
Yeah,
you're using it forever, using it every day. So you take that cost and then you divide it by every day for the rest of your life,
right.
and it doesn't look so bad, especially if you get that enjoyment out of it, you know, knowing that, you know, wow, this handle feels great, or look, it stays cool, or hey, this
Mhm.
is a little bit easier to season and maintain than that other skillet that's way cheaper. You know, for me, it's like, you can spend a lot of money on a suit, like a lot more than this. And it's no matter how many times you wear it, 10 years go by, it's going to be out of style, and you're
Your
probably
kids
going
aren't
to,
gonna want it.
your
Yeah, your
kids aren't
kids
going to
are not
want it.
gonna
You're
want
going to be donating this suit and buying another one.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, for me, just given that longevity, given the
Oh, yeah.
experience in the kitchen, you know, this is a premium tool for sure. And we build it for
Right.
people who want to enjoy their time in the kitchen. So, you know, there is on the scale of cast iron, it's expensive. On the scale of cookware, it is still expensive, but there's still stuff that's way more expensive. So, yeah, we didn't, and that's the other thing about this is like, we weren't, it sounds bad, but we weren't trying to make it less expensive. We were
Mhm.
trying to make it better.
Better, right. You can't focus on
And
everything and it be everything. You have to really
exactly,
pick.
exactly.
Mhm.
So, you know, if there are less expensive, you know, newly made skillets that are you know at higher quality levels than cheaper ones for sure. But we didn't really want to be competing there. We were like, we're gonna do this right. We're gonna do the best we can,
Right.
and that's our spot.
Right, right. And you're not alone up there by any means. Um, Now, the companies that I'm talking to are all USA companies. I mean, cast iron's made throughout the world, but we're focusing on those that are made right here in the States, and the Marquette skillets are. I did notice that you do have a grill slash griddle that is not made in the US. It is available on your website. Um, is that something that you're just tell me a little about that. Are you looking to venture into making the griddle here in the States eventually, or is that just something that, given what you're doing, you want to kind of move in a different direction in the future? Or how does the non-US products feature in for you guys?
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, for us, it was really about, you know, improvement, making something better. And
Hmm.
I think that translates to our enameled products as well. The
Right.
problem is, the fact of the matter is, there is no production capability in the United States for enameled products,
Yeah.
which is, it's kind of a shame. We've been trying to do this for a while. We were really close with a company in Tennessee, and this was about, oh, I don't know, it might have been about 2 years ago that we had some samples with them, and they were like, sorry, we're closing. So that was a big hit.
Nice.
Yeah, you're like, sorry,
Wow.
we're out of business. So we are currently working on an enameled carbon steel skillet that will be made in the USA. So
Wow.
now this sounds funny because you said, okay, well, people are probably thinking, well, if you can do carbon steel, why can't you do cast iron?
Yeah.
There's a limitation on the ovens right now, for this partner that we're working with, in that the thickness of casting, because what I really have been wanting to do is make a Dutch oven, an enameled Dutch oven
Yeah.
made in the US, because
Yeah.
that, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
other than
The,
Burrow
the cream of
furnace,
the crop.
essentially,
Yeah.
that does not exist.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a shame. I mean, you know, the Dutch oven was, you know, maybe our second product, and like for me, like a super important staple in the kitchen.
Yes. Yeah.
And we can't make it here, and it's frustrating. So it's something we've absolutely been working on. As you can imagine, supply chains like
Mhm.
worldwide are a mess, which
Mhm.
make it even easier and better and more beneficial for us to be able to do this here.
Mhm.
But we're just not there yet. I think what we'll do is, I think we're going to be able to get this carbon steel, the enameled carbon steel, up and running. I think we can do that. We haven't really got all the final tests yet.
Mhm.
There's a special enameling steel that we're using, We have the tooling made and ready. That's going to be made at a facility just outside of Chicago for the pan body itself.
Wow.
We have the tooling already made to die cast this handle. Exactly. So if you've seen our carbon steel skillet, we have this exact same handle cast, actually investment cast also in stainless steel. I know you're not talking about carbon steel, but
no, that's great.
That's so with that product, the thought was exactly the same. It's like carbon steel for me is like, I mean, I use my carbon steel just as much as I do this cast iron piece. And to be honest, the material is exactly the same. They are all like, or they are both like 95+% iron with some other, similar arrangements of other elements. So like in terms of cooking and thermal properties and everything, they are like exactly the same. The difference being carbon steel obviously formed from a sheet. It's a little bit smoother. Generally, carbon steel is a little bit lighter. We're an anomaly where our carbon steel skillet is actually heavier than our cast iron skillet.
Really?
Which is funny because we chose to use 3mm thick steel for the carbon steel, just like for evenness of heating and heat retention. To be brutally honest, we probably could have gone a little bit thinner. It's a little bit heavier than it probably needs to be. But it obviously does a great job with searing and all those other stovetop things.
Yeah.
So yeah, for us, like with the carbon steel, we have a really expensive carbon steel skillet, but that's because the handle we're putting on it is investment cast 304 stainless that's hand polished, also all done here in Michigan. So it's the most amazing handle you'd ever see, and it's nuanced because almost all handles you will see on cookware that look stainless steel, it's die cast and then plated. And that's fine. I mean, it's a good handle, but it's not quite as good as the solid stainless steel handle from a number of perspectives. Like, the die cast will get hot where our stainless steel handle won't. I mean, it's probably even better at staying cool than this one.
Wow.
And then also like the fact that we're just polishing the steel instead of coating it means that there's no chance that it'll ever chip or flake or do anything undesirable. So when I first got into carbon steel skillet, same thing. It was like, look, everyone's got this bent metal stick that's either welded or riveted to the side. If we're gonna make this better, it's the handle. And luckily we already had designed an awesome handle. So
well, it kind of goes back to what you were saying. I mean, the base of the skillet is the base. There's only so much you can do with it, but the handle does have a lot to say about how it feels, how you can use it, how user friendly is it, whether it wobbles or whatever else. Complaints probably come from the handle more than anything to do with the pan itself. So that's a pretty good approach to manage the handle instead. And I'm sure a lot of our cast iron folks use carbon steel or are at least interested in venturing into that. So that's interesting that it's that close. I didn't realize that the metals were that close.
Yeah. Really the only difference that you would see is obviously the surface, carbon steel generally being a lot smoother. And then the weight, it's usually thinner as well.
Wow.
So, and then, let me, I guess to clarify a little bit more, in our design, and I think most carbon steel skillets are the same thing, where our cast iron has a pretty steep wall. So this is really optimized a little bit more for baking, cornbread, pizza, whatever, things where it's going in the oven. Whereas the carbon steel skillet is a lot more flared, higher angle for like more spatula type movements. But so that's like the other small design difference between the two. Otherwise, pretty similar.
Now, in terms of your catalog, what you have available, you have the 10.5 inch, the 13-inch skillets, the Dutch ovens, griddles, grill pans, and the carbon steel products. And so that's quite a lineup. And where can people find this? I know we can find you on your website. and you're at marquettecastings.com.
Yep.
Okay. Are you in retail stores as well?
We are in just a few regionally. We've never really made that a priority. We've always been focused really on our website, the most. Amazon is kind of a little bit secondary for us. But the website's,
okay.
the website's the main focus. So yeah, we haven't really had much of a desire to try and push into the retail brick and mortar sector. I have a few friends in the retail kitchen business that have been super helpful in terms of being advisors to us in terms of consumer preferences and what would work, what wouldn't.
Sure.
We've kind of benefited a little bit from those relationships, but haven't made much of a push in that direction.
Well, and it's kind of a rough season for brick and mortar stores to be selling products because it's hard for customers to get out and browse these days. So you're not the only company that's really focusing online, and they're even one I know of that is only on their website. And so I think that really speaks to kind of where things are headed. So that's good to know. We can find you at marquettecastings.com, and I'll put the link in the video. And you said that you actually provide your skillets to Amazon as well. So if people are looking for your products and they want to shop on Amazon, they can actually find your real products on Amazon. That's good to know, because I know in some instances companies are not providing their skillets, but people overseas are copying their skillets, so you're not sure what you're buying. So that's good to know that you can find like a Marquette shop on Amazon and see your products there.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
So I think our whole catalog is also on Amazon. I believe it's the same price, so it should be probably same price, our website versus Amazon. Counterfeits are a huge problem with Amazon. It's something that they need to get ahead of, and they're not doing
they're not doing it.
So that's why I think for anyone, I think it's best practice for any type of moderate purchase to just try and go to the manufacturer's website, because I can't tell you the number of things I've seen go wrong with Amazon. I mean, even their customer service, for example, I just bought 12 Dutch ovens from kind of the 12 top leading Dutch ovens, and was on Amazon for a review and a test that I'm going to be doing later. And I went back a couple days later just to look through the orders, and noticed that I wasn't allowed to return anything. So like,
oh no,
they used to have this really easy return policy, and now that's completely gone away. So if there was a problem with any one of these, I wouldn't have been able to return it. And it just doesn't seem right. So
no, that's good for everybody to know, because we've all returned something. No, that's very good. I agree. In fact, I was going to do a blog post on this called "Don't Buy It on Amazon," because I didn't know as a customer when I started out that you really want to get your cast iron from the manufacturer. And people said, well, who's manufacturing these products? What website do I go to? And that was kind of the impetus for the video series, that people can put a face to the name of the product. We can show off the product a little bit. I can have pictures, and we'll have links to the different companies, because it's not just about the price or the weight. You kind of want to know, if you're going to spend that money, what are you getting? What other products are available from that company? Warranty. You guys offer a lifetime warranty on your product. I researched that.
Yep.
I mean, those things are important, and you're not going to get that from, a cheap knockoff pan.
Yeah, and to me, I think that's one of the biggest things to talk about is like, so we offer a lifetime warranty even on our enameled products. So, it's like you're sort of starting a relationship with us to some extent. And if you do that, via our website, that communication is a lot easier. Amazon doesn't really even allow sellers to communicate with the buyer beyond about 30 days after the purchase. So like, for a customer getting a hold of us, for us getting a hold of them, it's just, Amazon doesn't really even allow that to happen very well. So Another reason, just especially since, you know, we are super proud about how we stand behind our products. You know, the enameled stuff, for example, like we replace enameled products that's like totally the customer's fault that they like destroy from like dropping or overheating or whatever.
Yeah,
Like we have seen some ridiculous pictures,
I
but we've kind
bet.
of adopted this policy of like, okay, you know, you can do that once. Like we'll let you do that once. Like, you know, to
Yeah.
leave your Dutch oven on the stove and then walk the dog and then come back to a
Oh,
fire. You know, like
yeah,
we've seen it all.
I
But
bet.
that is not a policy that you're ever going to find on Amazon.
No,
Um, so
that's
yeah,
awesome. And you mentioned you have great customer service before we got on the line. And so I just think that's an important aspect people need to realize that is there for this kind of quality product that they're going to have for a lifetime. And that's a quote that I got off your website, cast for generations to come. I really like that. So I think
yeah,
that's a great place to end it today, Eric. You've given us so much information about Marquette and about cast iron in general. I love the investment process. That is super cool. And I can't wait to try out my skillet coming up. So, Eric, I just appreciate your time. I know everyone else does. So, everyone check out marquettecastings.com.
yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thank you so much. Take
All
care.
right, bye.